Welcome to Voices of Ovation, a podcast that celebrates the people behind independent healthcare. I'm David Winchester, your host. Each episode, we sit down with employees and leaders from our partner hospitals to share their personal and professional journeys, the challenges they face, the milestones they've reached, and the passion that drives them to make a difference in their communities. These are real stories from the front lines of healthcare, offering connection, inspiration, and a reminder of why our work matters. This is Voices of Ovation. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are thrilled that you're here to join us today. I'm your host, David Winchester, Program Manager for the Ovation Healthcare Learning Institute. In today's episode, we'll be speaking with Shelley McGregor. She's the Volunteer Service Coordinator for Ovation's Healthcare Partner Hospital, Gritman Medical Center. For over 5 years, Shelley has been instrumental in building Gritman's volunteer service program, helping hundreds of students fulfill their goals of training in healthcare through Gritman's hospital and clinic system. Under Shelley's leadership, Gritman has worked with over 630 students, volunteers, and interns in the past 18 months. Shelley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Well, to get started, can you share a few facts about Gritman's volunteer program and what inspired you to lead this?
We have some interesting facts about our volunteer program. Today, looking at stats, we have had 739 students and interns come through our program. We currently have 29 projects with 70 sub-projects underneath that. And this was an opportunity that came to us through COVID. COVID wasn't all bad. It gave us an opportunity to reevaluate, recognize the needs of our community, and in 2022, we reinvented ourselves and created a different concept in volunteering. During COVID, we recognized that our general volunteer population was not comfortable in the hospital. We also have a unique demographic of where we live. We are touching the University of Idaho, and we're 7 miles away from Washington State University, and we're about an hour away from 5 other regional schools, junior colleges, and so forth. Those schools were looking for opportunities for their students. Idaho stayed in person during COVID. So those students were looking for requirements for pre-med students to get shadowing opportunities, volunteer opportunities. The students at WSU, even though they were 100% remote, were looking for things to do. They were disconnected, and we found an opportunity at Gritman to kind of recognize we had needs as well. And these students really fit well within those needs. We knew that we were struggling with mental health capacity at our hospital. We're not a mental health hospital, but we are a holding facility to keep people safe until they can be transferred to an appropriate facility. We early on identified that these students could be a key piece of that, a partner with our team to be able to observe and monitor an extra set of eyes, and ultimately found that they are capable of charting, they're capable of being a great teammate, and that's kind of how it evolved and started. And then eventually we rolled those students into our med-surg unit as an extra set of hands for staff wearing PPE so they didn't have to come in and out of patient rooms, and then it just grew from there.
Wow. So this is for college students only, or do you have high school students involved as well?
We started with a college student concept. We felt that those pre-med students were excellent candidates for what we were trying to do. They were seeking greater things. We could be a piece of that. We have changed in the last year. We've redefined ourselves. We recognize COVID is over. We need to evolve and grow some more. So yes, we've grown our high school program. Our youngest volunteer at Gritman is 16. Our oldest volunteer is 95. But 95% of our volunteers are college age in that young 20 demographic.
So what other volunteer opportunities does Gritman offer for these folks?
In the last year, we've shifted from our priority being specifically volunteer to kind of an intern concept. And we step back and listen. We have a huddle every morning at 9 a.m. and it tells us how the workflow is going, how we're staffing, what our needs are. We work with HR. We listen to the huddle. We identified a year ago that we needed more capacity in our fiscal department. We touched the University of Idaho. We went to those leaders in those education departments at the University of Idaho, and we currently have 5 interns in our fiscal department that are going to help us meet new capacities, new roles, new regulations. It's actually 50% of our staff. We have 5 staff members, 5 interns. We actually are almost equal volunteer intern to staff at Gritman at this point. So we uniquely look every day. We've brought in specialties and materials. We brought in specialty in, like I said, accounting. So it's not just healthcare. We're trying to look at every area of the hospital and kind of find a way. I call it the long interview for these students. Find a way for them to navigate through. And these are non-paid internships. None of our volunteers are paid. Our volunteers actually pay all of their own expenses to get onboarded, including background check and vaccination documentation. So all of this is at no cost to Gritman. And we are still being inundated daily with requests to be here.
So you guys truly do have a unique situation there that Gritman is being able to benefit from all the different colleges. And I'm so impressed too that you're taking the opportunity to reinvent yourself often to see, where are we? What are our needs? How can we best utilize these folks who are willing to invest in our, facility on any given day? How many volunteers do you think you have there at Gritman?
I have active currently today about 300, just shy of 300, but we're about to have students come back. It's that time of year, and that number is going to be higher. So our emergency room department, we allow about 30 volunteers at a time, one at a time, but 30 on the schedule. And it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're allowed to volunteer. On med surge, we can take that easily to 50. We allow 3 volunteers at a time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But we stumbled across a program called Volunteer Matters that allows these students to independently schedule themselves. So I don't have set schedules. The students get to schedule when they're available. They're accountable for their own time. This program clocks them in and out. It lets us know who's here and when they're here. But that has probably been the piece of magic that has made this happen, is letting these students onboard independently. We bring them in and train. They're paying their own expenses to get here, spend about 2 hours in each department onboarding them on their first day. They get passed off to a staff member, and then they're able to schedule independently and work independently from there without us setting schedules.
Well, that is a tremendous program that you have, but to be able to facilitate and to program manage this volunteer program, Shelley, what is it that has helped you prepare for this position?
I do have an unusual background. My education is in nursing, but my husband and I own grocery stores. And so we own grocery stores in Idaho and Washington. We're an independent. We're an IGA family. And so we've been forced to reinvent ourselves over and over. And it's kind of a mindset that we have lived by. We are also a volunteer family. We are a family that likes to get involved in our local community. I was a 4-H leader, had over 800 kids come through my 4-H program. Somewhere in the middle of that, the 4-H program decided to end the fair. And so we reinvented, and we've done this over and over. I find that probably is what fills my bucket, is looking, stepping back, observing, and trying to find a different pathway. I don't like to sit stagnant. So I think that's probably been the best benefit for me, is that my thought process landed in an organization that is independent, which gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. And they gave us a lot of trust in building a program that generally would be perceived as high risk. And we've actually been able to make it very low risk through the processes that we've been able to add.
Shelley, you just mentioned that to many people, this would be a high risk program. Why is that?
Putting students and volunteers in patient care is always perceived as high risk. And then we actually allow our volunteers to take it a step further and have patient contact. Normal volunteer program in healthcare has these students folding towels, wiping down counters, filing things. That isn't what we do here. What we have done is put and implemented steps along the way to ensure some safety and some understanding about what they can and cannot do. And it's those tools that have allowed us to do this in a safe way. It's just a piece of information that I ran into over and over in this organization was the safety, the volunteers. We really don't want them in healthcare. We really are concerned about whether or not we should do that. And so we modeled our onboarding process to actually mimic a staff member. That's why our staff is required to do 18 steps to be here. Our students actually do 22, 18 of those being the exact same steps that you would be if you were a nurse, if you were a CNA, if you were an EVS employee. So we have them follow the entire onboarding process of a staff member. In addition, we add reference letters, additional training, health stream, things like that. And that model is why we are, I think, as successful as we are, because there's always compliance questions. There's always, safety in healthcare questions. And that model has alleviated that conversation in our organization.
Well, Shelley, you've told us that you have hundreds of students. So recruiting volunteers is not a problem at all. But I'm sure that you face some challenges with that number of folks and exactly, what to do and where they can serve. So what are some of the challenges that you have with this size of group?
Managing numbers is our number one problem. We have identified that if we go to the campus that we are wanting to work with, we meet that leader within that demographic, whether it be pre-med, we meet with a pre-med advisor. We set out some parameters about who we're going to allow into the program, who we're going to encourage to grow themselves before they join us. And then we meet with those students and those student leaders and find a population of students that we invite to come and join us. And then those students from there move into this program that we use, and they onboard themselves independently, which helps manage those students. We are a department of 1.5. I'm a 1.5 person department managing this volume. And so the more independent these students can be, the better. And that independence does thin the herd just a little bit. It's 22 steps to onboard with us and about $300 in personal expense, bare minimum. So if you're willing to do those things, then once you're here, that helps manage our numbers a little bit.
Well, how is it that you can convince people to invest $300 to go through 22 steps and then volunteer their time in service?
It's a different way of looking at things. We've always thought we needed volunteers. And what I think we can recognize is these students need us. They're applying to medical school, they're applying to nursing school, they're needing internships in really every aspect of education. We are that. We really fit every degree at the University of Idaho. There is probably a pathway for them here. I'm even working this year on bringing business students into our gift shop. We've struggled staffing our gift shop with our auxiliary who didn't necessarily come back in the droves that we were hoping after COVID, but they need those hours and they need that work experience. So instead of us looking for volunteers, we made ourselves available for students who are looking and needing these opportunities. And in addition, we have negotiated with all of our local universities that these students can receive credit hours for being here. So yes, it costs them money, but their benefit versus cost to them is pretty low. They can get between 1 and 3 credit at their university for being here. And if that was $300 for those credits for those students to get here, it's probably the cheapest $300 credit that they'll get. And so it's an unusual situation where most people are concerned and we need to cater to these volunteers. And we really don't. We really just provide them the most incredible experience. So that is our responsibility, is to provide them the very best experience while they're here. And that word of mouth has just grown.
Well, I have a question. So you have volunteers from age 16 to 95. So the atmosphere there is so intergenerational. What benefits do you see with those different age groups working together?
What I find is that staff usually is drawn to a specific demographic of volunteer. And so what you're finding is someone for everyone. Um, it took probably a year for the staff to recognize that volunteers are not more work. And once we've convinced them of that and kind of shown them the way, you do find that certain staff are seeking those 16-year-olds where other staff are seeking those older populations. And it feels like there's someone for everyone. Um, they are not generally working together, although I will put my two bookends together. My 16-year-old and my 95-year-olds actually are better partners to each other. And that middle demographic is best working with themselves, and they mentor and peer each other. Our goal with that middle group is that we want you mentoring and peering with somebody 1 to 2 years ahead of you in school. We always think that that's the best advice. We love to think that we can help these students heading into pre-med medical school programs, which is most of our volunteers. But somebody 1 or 2 years ahead of them probably has more real life experience and tends to be a good mentor. So we mentor and partner those students up with each other.
Shelley, you guys' work with college students is absolutely incredible, where in a society today, there's sometimes some negative feelings or comments about Generation Z. But why is it that you're taking a risk on Generation Z?
I've always found it humorous listening generationally to the generation before complain about the generation behind them. And I think that that's a silly way of looking at each generation. I think that we may not be the greatest generation, but we're a darn good generation. And through my volunteer programs, I worked with scholarship programs, I've worked with youth in the court systems. I just think that young people are innately good and they want to be better than the generation before them. And they've proven it to us over and over. You walk into a conference at University of Idaho and students will be drawn. People are showing up. They want to grow. They want to be better. And I believe that that is inherently how every generation is. And these students have proven to be that. I think that we get selfish in thinking that no one can do it better than we can. And I am confident that the next generation is going to be better than we are.
Incredible program, incredible leaders. How is this affecting the whole community of Gritman?
It's not an easy time in healthcare. I got handed an email this morning that the University of Idaho is recognizing us in their partnership impact report for 24-25. It's wins. It's wins when we're not getting wins every day in the healthcare system. Finances are hard. Healthcare is hard. This isn't hard. And it's a lot of community wins where the community sees us giving back. They see these students. They appreciate when their own child gets these opportunities. It's very simple, very high reward. And I think that the community values this. The chamber talks about it. We're just a constant topic in this community. And I think that, in healthcare, we'll take the wins where we can get them. People don't come to a hospital because they're having a good day. But if you can increase your rounding by 100% with students rounding on patients, that patient's going to leave that healthcare setting feeling more satisfied. I don't know if it's parallel. I would like my ego to tell me that it is, but we are a 5-star hospital when we have strived for that for years, and we are there. I don't believe the care is better now than it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We give incredible care at Gritman. We are an exceptional hospital, but maybe those students are making an impact. Maybe it's the magic that has helped our community and our patients see what great care they have been getting, and we're finally being acknowledged for it.
Well, I am sure in this program and for the years that you have been managing this program, you have to have some incredible stats to share with us.
I do.
I knew you would.
We just took the last 12 months for fun. In the last 12 months, we have onboarded and calculated at least 20 or more hours for 339 students. Our student that has the most volunteer hours has over 2,000. Most of our students are getting well over 300. And when we calculated those hours, and they are underreported. That older demographic tends to not be great about calculating their hours. My younger students don't always put their hours in, but when you calculate the hours that are real clock in and clock out times that we are getting from our college age students, that's over 21,000 hours in volunteer time in patient care this year. And Idaho minimum wage is $7.25. So that's over $150,000 in free labor to our organization that are doing really high value things. These students answer call lights, they're rounding on patients, they're a second set of hands with the CNA. They're not providing healthcare, but they're parallel to healthcare and absorbing healthcare. And it's a big measurable number for a small critical access hospital in Moscow, Idaho.
So, Shelley, what does a typical day look like for you?
I try to keep my calendar open because we tend to just get calls. We work on answering the problem in the moment. We don't schedule things out far in advance unless we're onboarding students. And I do that in a group capacity to manage our numbers. So if I'm onboarding students that day, I take between 3 and 5 at a time that are always going to the same department. And we spend several hours together observing, watching, and learning. Outside of that, I think the most valuable thing that we've recognized as we've grown is that we need to pull back and check on those students while they're in that space. Early on, we identified that we could put these students in really high risk, high value locations. We were struggling with our surgery team. They were using a tremendous amount of travelers, and we put students in central sterile. That was 300 hours of their time. We followed up. It was new. It was high risk. I was monitoring regularly. Those students, 100% of our first year students are now currently enrolled in medical school. And those students really hit it out of the park and succeeded. As we've grown, I'm doing less checking in. I'm doing less follow-up. And we've had a few failures. And we don't hesitate to fire here. You get a zero, we're a zero tolerance. You do something that doesn't fit well with our organization, we just move you along. And this year we've had that happen a couple of times, 2 or 3 times. I do think that's our failure. I think that it's because we need to free up some time. But if my perfect day were to be laid out, I would spend 2 or 3 hours at the computer answering some emails. I'd spend, 5 or 6 hours on the floor rounding on these students and staff, making sure that we're successful and that we're meeting the particular needs and fine-tuning those areas where they need to be fine-tuned. And then the rest of it would just fall into place, right? But right now, I think we're probably a little too big for that. And that's going to be something that we're reevaluating this year. Do we need to add another half staff? Is this a job that a volunteer could do that would follow up and check on these students? Do we do a senior volunteer concept? So learn and grow, evolve, but don't stay stagnant, because once you're stagnant, you should just retire.
Good advice. I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you gotten from students after they've gone through your volunteer program?
I think it's the positive feedback we're getting from students that has driven this program. We started small. We did it right. We were careful. We chose really very specific students to go to very specific areas, recognizing that social need in those spaces. And the result has been an incredibly high rate of students getting into medical school, which was the goal of this program. We do have a nursing residency program. It's ran through our education program, but we really focused on pre-med students initially. We're writing letters of reference, we're writing recommendation to these programs. These kids are getting in. These students are getting into medical school, which is the goal. I've got a stack of thank you cards. I probably got 20 of them this year sitting with me for students thanking us for this opportunity and that they felt that it was pivotal in their acceptance to medical school. In addition to that, we have about a 10% higher rate. These students that come in as freshmen and sophomores that are pre-med students are picking up a CNA license. They volunteer with us on the floor. Carter, he's one of the students that's put several thousand hours into volunteering. We rolled him into a CNA program. He's now a CNA on the floor. And the other benefit of that is he absolutely knew the job and he absolutely knew us. And so that higher cost has to be greatly reduced. So a 10% hire rate isn't bad. We're hiring them as phlebotomists, as MAs, as CNAs. And I would tell you the only reason that 10% is a higher rate than it is that we literally don't advertise for those positions in our hospital. They are 100% filled. We just don't have a need, and we're not seeking those because they're built into this volunteer concept.
Well, thank you for sharing about Carter, and I'm excited for him and his job there. Can you think of some other success stories that stand out?
I'm going to go back to our beginning, which probably was pivotal in this conversation and probably was what supported us in this concept. Kara Best, our CEO of our hospital, started at Gritman as an intern. She's been here 30 years, and we brought interns into that fiscal space. And those students are going to be really high value hires for us. Like I said, I've got 5 in that space right now. We've got a student that is an intern that we have hired. There's another student in that space that was in fiscal that has been identified as a high value employee in HR. And these are students graduating, coming into us and staying with their degrees, unlike the MAs and the CNAs and our phlebotomists that are here for now and moving on. We've got students that are coming and interning and staying.
Well, to think about the number of folks that you work with and have the opportunity to mentor, I just have to ask, did you have any mentors or experiences that shaped your passion for this kind of service?
I did. I was lucky enough to be a farm kid from Idaho, grew up very rural. And I think that that's kind of the mentality of agriculture, to mentor and to grow and to teach through generation. And I had that blessing in my life. And I can think of a lot of people. And actually, I would even tell you, watching my children experience those same things has reminded me of those people that come and put in their time and help you be better. It's an accountability world where we answer to each other. My son always tells the jokes about the straight lines in a field when you plant a field at the end of the season and you're harvesting and you know that you did a good job and the neighbor comments what a good job you did. I think that generational neighbor helping neighbor, it has been kind of who I am and how I live my life. And the list of names would be endless if I were to tell you who they were, but you try to honor those people by passing on and doing what you got and passing that to the next generation of people. And how that's what we're doing here. I think Gritman as a whole, we got this as this hospital has been a gift. This hospital was a gift to us from Dr. Gritman to our community. He didn't have children. I consider us his children. I hope that we're passing on his legacy. I think that we're doing our best, and I hope that we continue to grow and continue and honor this gift that we have been given by that family.
Shelley, you mentioned the legacy that Dr. Gritman has left for you guys, but I'm curious, what legacy do you hope to leave?
I hope that this volunteer program is a legacy that's more than service. I want it to be a healthcare legacy. I think that when we welcome these college students into our organization, we shape their future. And by doing that, we shape the future of healthcare. By bringing these kids in, we vet and train and invest in these young professionals long before they become employees. And I hope that when we do that, we're instilling the skills and the value and the compassion that defines healthcare as a career. And each of these volunteer experiences, I hope, leaves a mark, not just on Gritman, but other organizations who will take a chance with this type of a volunteer program. I think it's going to leave a mark on your community, and I think it leaves a mark on the future of healthcare.
Well, as we wrap up this episode, is there anything that you'd like our listeners to know or any advice that you have for those hoping to recruit volunteers to their hospital?
Yes, I hope that we reevaluate our historical way of how we look at volunteer and recruitment. We have a history of kind of looking back and taking individuals with experience and maturity. And even sometimes I think we focus on potential benefactors when we're looking at those volunteer programs. And I think that model has value, but I don't think it builds our future. I think that it's better to take a far-sighted approach. I always say this is the 5-year plan, where we invest in the next generation of healthcare students by recruiting and training and mentoring these students who will then one day become professionals. And they're going to give back, and they're going to continue to be a part of what we're doing and moving forward. I think by growing our own, which is what this is, we're building a lasting legacy program that transforms today's volunteers and builds compassion in these young people. And I think that that is a more sustainable model, and I hope that people will consider it.
Well, this brings us to the end of this episode. Shelley, thank you so much for being with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Well, it was awesome having you. And also, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Thank you for joining us on the Ovation Healthcare Learning Institute podcast. We're committed to supporting independent hospitals as they navigate challenges and shape a stronger future for the communities they serve. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, share this episode, and connect with us on LinkedIn at Ovation Healthcare, or visit us at ovationhc.com for more insights and resources. Until next time, keep leading with confidence.